Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sully's Tech Hub. In today's video, we are going to be looking at how to get the absolute maximum out of portraits. Not just portrait mode, but out of portraits from the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. I've been guilty of commenting on other people's Xiaomi 15 Ultra videos, suggesting to them that they don't actually use the portrait mode in the phone, and instead that they should take the photo in the regular mode and then add the portrait effect afterwards, which is enabled by the Xiaomi Gallery Editor. Before we jump into this video, I did want to thank everyone who has subscribed in the last month. Wow, felt like it was just less than a month ago that I was thanking everybody for 100 subscribers, and as of the recording of this video, I'll check again, but as of the recording of this video, we are all the way up to 161. So wow, that is a huge growth in such a short period of time. I'm incredibly thankful for you guys, so thanks for subscribing to the channel. As always, I do want to give you guys the option of some timestamps because I know not everybody's interested in everything. I do think you will be quite confused by some of the results if you skip the intro. So I do recommend that you stick for the intro, but if you are going to skip anyways, here is the timestamps for this video. I do want to tell you guys about an upcoming project as well that is kind of semi-related to this. I am currently doing a product photography campaign with my phone with a watch micro brand, like a wristwatch micro brand based out of Indiana. I would greatly appreciate it if you guys would go support them because they are supporting the channel here by loaning me a watch to take photos of with my Xiaomi 15 Ultra. They put a great deal of trust in me, sending me a product, and so that's tremendous for the channel. So I would appreciate if you guys go follow them on Instagram, the Kokomo Watch Company. I'll show you guys a couple of videos, but I'm going to be making an entire video about my experience shooting product photography with the Xiaomi 15 Ultra for professional uses. Taking my own advice, I decided to test this theory and see if you actually get better results doing it that way. I did know that there was some slight different processing through Jermaine's Lens. He's a cool YouTube channel. If you haven't checked him out, I do recommend it. Go see his videos. Great videos on the Oppo Find X8 Ultra, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, the Vivo X200 Ultra, Samsung S25 Ultra. Great videos on all those if you're really into photography. But I was giving this advice, so I decided to take the advice and test it out for myself. Let me get into some of the housekeeping that needs to be done before we have this discussion about portrait mode on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. First of all, my claim was that the Xiaomi 15 Ultra tweaks the colors a little bit when shooting in the portrait mode as compared to using the regular automatic mode. The Xiaomi 15 Ultra is not the only phone guilty of this. Many phones do slightly tweak the colors and try to clean up the skin tones and remove blemishes and make some editorial decisions about the image other than just adding the background blur. Okay, so Xiaomi's not the only one guilty of this. The other thing that I want to get out of the way is I don't know if you guys have ever messed around a whole lot with HDR images, and when I mean mess around with them, I don't just mean taking them, I mean viewing them on different displays, trying to mix HDR images with SDR or standard dynamic range images. But just so you guys know, I'm going to say it up front, some of these videos are in HDR and some of these videos are in SDR. This video is going to be published in SDR. Okay, so when you see this big, I'm just saying it's going to be possible that you guys are going to see some quite substantial color shifts in some of the images, and that's mostly going to be due to the use of SDR and HDR being published in an SDR video. Okay, so with that out of the way, there's a couple more things I want to say. I want to talk about how I got these images. I do understand that portrait mode is used for more than just people, but for this video, I was lucky enough to have two of my friends assist me in making this video. One of them is named Winifred, and one of them is named Whitley. Okay, so the reason I wanted to shoot with both of them is because I know that especially with Chinese handsets, Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, they are notorious for, let's just say, treating skin tones differently than, say, some Western phones. So I wanted to have a darker skin example to test the color shifts, and I wanted to have a lighter skin example to test some of these color shifts. My objective in this challenge was to compete with the portrait mode, not necessarily to make the most color accurate image or not necessarily to make the best image. It was to compete. Like, can I make a better portrait mode shot than the portrait mode? Okay, so that's my objective for this video. Okay, one more thing to get out of the way. I do want to talk about my methodologies in how I got these images. Okay, so I shot 3 times in every pose. That was the standard shot, that was a portrait mode shot, and that was a raw shot, or a manual mode shot, which is the only way that you can get raw off of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. I have to say that because we're going to have some standard outputs, and then we're going to have some edited outputs that we're going to look at. And I've got a professional editing monitor pulled up behind the phone. You can't see it. So I'm going to be providing commentary on these photos. You guys will see the photos, and hopefully we can arrive at some conclusions. I also took the time to compare like how to get these results, right? Not just like taking the photos, but what else. You have to do stuff afterwards, right? So the standard shot does export in HDR when you take it. The portrait mode exports in HDR when you take it. The raw files, I thought they did, but now I'm second guessing, and I'm thinking no, they don't, because I really don't feel like I'm seeing HDR when I view some of these photos for sure. So I just want to point that out, that it's not really conclusive to me whether or not the raw is exporting in HDR. I thought it was, but now looking at some of these, I'm second guessing myself. Finally, how did I edit them? So there are 4 files from the initial, right? So there's the standard, there's the portrait mode, but what you should know is when you take the raw shot, it creates a JPEG and it creates a raw file. So there's 4 total files to start with. And then there are 4 edited copies, right? So I took the standard shot and I edited it with the gallery editor. Okay, I took the raw file and I edited it with the gallery editor to see if it does handle raw files any differently, which it does. So I in the previous video, you guys can go back and see that I was saying that I wasn't entirely sure if the Xiaomi 15 Ultra's gallery editor handled raw files differently than it does JPEGs. I can conclude now, just based on these results, that it does, or at least that the files are so much more flexible that they feel like it handles them differently. There is no signifier, there is no indication that it handles the files differently, but I could just tell you by the outputs that it does handle them differently, or at least you can get definitively a different result using the gallery editor with raw files versus JPEGs. Finally, I also used Lightroom, and talking about Lightroom Mobile from Adobe, which is a free application. There is a paid version of the application. I don't recommend that you give them any of your money. And there are certainly some limitations with the free version. I know some people are going to say, well, you should have tested the premium version. I'm principally opposed giving money to subscription-based products that should be one-time purchases, so it's not going to happen. But, so Adobe Lightroom for mobile does let you do a HDR and an SDR output. So with the raw file, there is also an HDR output and an SDR output, and that is going to give us all of our comparative results. I don't know if you guys want to hear the results up front or if you want to hear them at the end. I will tell you some of my conclusions first, and then we can look at some examples, because I think some of you are just curious what the answer is, like how do you get the best result out of the Xiaomi? I did send all of these copies. I sent all of Whitney's photos to Whitley. I sent all of Winifred's photos to Winifred and asked them, you know, which of these do you prefer? There was a mixture of when they chose the portrait mode. Some of them did choose the portrait mode, despite my best efforts to edit some copies out of it. But sometimes my edits did win. I got a few wins with my Lightroom edits, because I think Lightroom handles colors the best overall. So if you're looking for the most like color depth, the most color accurate, the most like tone mapping type of, you know, photo that has like a good fall off, a gradient from different colors that just feels like it records in a higher bit rate, then you'll want to use Lightroom Mobile. There are some problems with doing that though, and I tested this out initially. You can take a photo that's raw, run it through Lightroom, and I didn't end up doing this, by the way. So I tried it once, and it was just so much work that I was like, man, this is a lot of work for a portrait mode shot. So to keep it fair, I didn't continue doing this. But what I initially tried doing was I would take the raw file, I would edit it in Lightroom to get like the great colors, and then I would export it as an SDR file. I would take that SDR file, run it through the gallery editor. Okay, so now we're running a twice edited photo, and I do feel like I perceived some compression. I don't know where it's coming from because both of them are set to export at maximum quality, but I can just tell you when I was running stuff through multiple editors, they just didn't look as good coming out of the other end of that pipeline. But I was editing in Lightroom, getting my colors right, exporting it, and then I was putting it in the gallery editor to do things like add the artificial bokeh, add the skin corrections, and remove blemishes and things like that. So, you know, I tried a lot here is what I'm trying to say. I tried a lot, but what I can say is when I edited with the gallery editor, since I only did the gallery editor on the regular photo, gallery editor on the raw, and then raw with Lightroom SDR, raw with Lightroom HDR. Those are my 4 that I chose to continue with. The gallery editor has tools for background blur. The gallery editor has tools for AI corrections. The gallery editor has tools for blemishes and skin tone corrections and stuff like that. Whereas Lightroom does not. So you kind of have to choose which one you want. You can either have really good skin tones, and I would say you get those from Lightroom, or you can get like really good, you know, background blur and basically effects added to the image, like skin smoothing and stuff like that. And it's very easy. I would say with the gallery editor, it's very easy to get a very natural result. It looks very authentic without overdoing it. The portrait mode is, to me, is very overdone. I can tell you that the portrait mode adds a ton of skin smoothing. It like removes all imperfections. And some people will like that, but I think most people find it a bit overdone. I didn't go to see if there's some way to like tune it to like tell it to do it less. But what it seems like is that it takes all of those like editing options and just maxes them out, like maximum skin smoothing, maximum complexion adjustment, maximum shadow reduction. I mean, it just maxes everything out. But yeah, I would say that in most cases it's less, and it's better to do like 20%. You know, if you do like the blemish removal, okay, the blemish removal, I think that's the tool. I'll check afterwards and I'll ping it up if it's a different one. It really looks best, like it cleans it up and it looks natural at like 20%. You don't need to go to like 100%. If you go to 100%, it looks like a painting. I mean, it's like so smooth. I mean, their face looks like it's ceramic. It's so unnatural. So anyways, let's look at some of these images. So this first one is a picture of Winifred, and I chose to put her in a challenging lighting circumstance where it's kind of dark on one half, bright on one half, right? So you guys, as you guys know, this is a very challenging lighting scenario if you've ever shot with phones before. And that was kind of the point. Just so you guys know, again, this was a test, not a photo shoot, okay? So a lot of the photos I intentionally chose difficult lighting scenarios so that I could show you what is possible, not to like say, look how good this shot is. Okay, so one of the things I could say right now, I'm looking at the edited shot that I did with the gallery editor. And what you'll see is if you look in the trees here, I'm using the spiral, or I think it's called rotational background blur, which reminds me of my Helios 44-2. That's an old Soviet lens that is famous for having barrel distortion. Okay, and I really like that look, but what you'll notice is that it takes a lot of the brighter spots in these trees and it's misinterpreting them as lights. And you can actually see it's trying to interpret them as like almost like street lights or something. So that is a mistake by the portrait mode. But if you or by the AI added portrait mode after the fact. But if you look at the actual portrait mode shot, which is more of a standard portrait mode, it's a very even-handed portrait mode. Her skin is obviously very heavily altered. It does look good. It's very flattering. The shadows are quite lifted. I would say the saturation is a little bit increased. But what you'll notice is that it's not making that mistake with the trees where it's misinterpreting the bright spots as street lights. So in this case, I would say overall the portrait mode did a little bit better. It lacks some contrasts. It looks a little bit unnatural, but it's a very fun look if you like it. Like, she looks very pretty. She looks very bright and saturated, and the background is obviously melted away. I do also want to point out that just in the regular shot, you do get quite a bit of background blur anyways. Like, before you even do anything artificial, you do get a lot of background blur just from shooting, right? I had mentioned this before, that the lenses on this camera will produce something of a background blur just on account of them being large sensors with large apertures. So let's continue. Now we've got the raw shots, and we've got the raw edited in the gallery editor. And one of the things you can tell right away is just the color richness is quite a bit more present. There's just a lot more rich colors, rich tones. I just find that it looks a lot more natural. I don't know, to me the colors always look really natural to me coming from the raw shot, whether it's edited in Lightroom or not. Then I have my raw edited copy, okay, and the way we can see that is that it has the spiral, okay, that's how you know I edited it in the gallery editor. But what you'll notice is that it didn't make the same light mistakes. If you look at the trees, you'll see that we don't have those mistakes in the trees, which is quite odd that it didn't make the same mistake twice. Of course, I typically shoot stuff at a lower exposure, and the reason that I do that is because, if you guys don't know, I'm also going to try to give you guys some tips throughout. It is so much easier to recover shadows than it is to recover highlights. If you shoot something too bright, consider the detail gone. But if you shoot something too dark, typically it's pretty easy to bring dark stuff back into the image. And I'm gonna continue to show you that throughout this video, because there are several instances of this. Okay, now we got the next shot. This is Winifred again, with like a building in the background. There's a street behind her, and she's sitting in the grass. She really did like this shot. She was a big fan of this shot. But remember what I said earlier about the highlights? You can see that there's a little bit of overexposure on her cheek and on her forehead where it's completely white and there's a loss of detail. Okay, let's look at the portrait mode shot first. It's very bright, a little bit oversaturated. If you look at the grass, it's like ultra green. Not a big fan of it myself personally. You can see that I toned it down really to bring the attention back into Winifred. And I will say that I used the vignette very, very, slightly. I didn't like heavy-handedly use it, but I used the vignette to kind of pull the attention back into Winifred, or the subject, the center of the frame. And I was also able to kind of darken those, the grass here. She didn't give any opinion on these. I just told her, pick your favorites, and she picked a couple, but it wasn't these. But she did tell me, on the day of, that she really liked the shot. We go over to the raw shots, okay? And I could definitely tell that one of these is the HDR copy because it's coming out very flat on my display, and I can tell my display is not an HDR display. But let's look at, here is our raw file edited with the gallery editor. Again, great colors. It's such a, I'm hoping that you guys can really tell this, but there's so much more granularity to the colors that I would say overall for a portrait shot, probably the best you can do is probably going to be portrait mode, or excuse me, it's going to be using the raw manual capture and then editing in the gallery editor. That's going to give you the most color depth. That's going to give you the option to get the background blur and to get the skin corrections. The only thing that you're going to miss is that you get, again, slightly better tones on Lightroom. It's not a huge difference. It is there, but it's not huge. And I will also say that you can't get the HDR output out of the gallery editor. I do wish that they would add that as a feature. I don't know, clearly it's possible because you can get HDR output out of Lightroom, but you cannot get HDR output out of the gallery editor. Once you start to edit a file, even if it's HDR going in, once you make a change, it immediately snaps out of HDR and it goes back to being a regular image. Okay, just to let you guys know what you can expect. Yeah, so these photos look great. I think these photos look really good. Really, really good. Nothing else to really comment there. Let's go to this one. This was another challenging lighting scene. You can see that she is bright, like her forehead is very bright, but she's in the shadow, right? You can see some of the light coming down. It's kind of hitting on her shirt, so you can see there's definitely an angle here. And you guys have to resist the urge to judge the images by the facial expressions, because sometimes she had a very flattering facial expression in the portrait mode, but not in the regular shot. And sometimes she had a very flattering facial expression in the regular shot, but not in the portrait mode. You need to be paying attention to how is the cutout, how is the skin tones, how is the lighting, how are the shadows, how are the highlights captured, right? We're looking at the quality of the image, right? Don't look at, well, her face looks better in this one, so I like this one more. Okay, that's not what the portrait comparison is, okay? So you can obviously tell on the portrait mode shot, very flattened in terms of contrast. You have a lot of like skin smoothing, all the blemishes are removed, and actually the eyes are accentuated too. It's not just that her eyes are open, there's actually an eye slider in the adjustments that basically what it does, it makes the whites of the eyes whiter, and it makes eye reflections brighter. So let's say that you have a key light, and you have like an eye reflection, and it makes your eyes like little sparkle in your eyes. When you adjust the eye slider all the way up, it will increase the intensity of that sparkle, and it will make your eyes whiter. It'll make your blue eyes bluer. It will make your green eyes greener, that sort of thing. Actually, I don't find that the effect is ever like super unnatural, so I think you can use it safely without, fear of it, ruining the shot or whatever. Again, skin tones are really good in the Adobe Lightroom output, especially the HDR one. It looks a little bit like cringy HDR on this display, because this display is displaying an SDR. So again, if you don't know, if you view HDR images on SDR displays, it looks bad. If you view HDR images on HDR displays, it looks fantastic. So I have viewed these on HDR displays, and they do look really, really good. Okay, so there's the image that is the raw capture edited in the gallery editor. Again, overall, I really like this output, right? Because we have the skin effects, we have the background blur, we have the better skin, the tones from the raw capture compared to the standard capture. I could just definitely tell it's not able to catch as broad of a spectrum of light when you're shooting in the standard mode. I could just tell right away. Now, I shot this manual mode twice because I shot it a little bit too warm at first. This is Winifred sitting on the stairs. You can see that she has, she's sitting down. You can see that the background is blurred even before we add any blur. In the portrait mode, it's very pretty. It didn't remove all blemishes. As you can see on her forehead, it left one. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that in this case, it didn't remove everything, okay? You can see that my edit's quite a bit darker. I tried to keep natural skin tones. I tried my best. In the raw capture, it was a little bit warm, so editing it was a little bit difficult. When you are shooting in manual mode, you want to get as close as possible, and then you can edit the rest of the way, but you're always going to have a better result when you start from a closer position, right? You want to get as close as possible. So I shot one that was a little bit cooler, and even though I do think overall the image is cooler than real life, I think I was able to edit this to a closer to accurate result, and I'll show you that here. I think it looks really good overall. I think the portrait mode is very flattering in this set. I will tell you guys about another discovery I made, and I'm going to show you this in a bit. The 100mm lens, aka the 4.3x lens or the periscopic zoom lens on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, actually has a digital crop. I've learned it. I didn't know that. And I'm talking about like when you open it and you just go to the lens, it's actually slightly digitally cropped. And I'll tell you how I know. When we shot in the manual mode, it's using the full sensor. Okay, so we actually saw that there's a slight focal range. There's a focal length difference shooting with the 4.3x lens in regular mode versus shooting with the 4.3x lens in the raw mode. And what's interesting is in the raw mode, it's backed up a little bit. Like you could see more of the scene in the 4.3x. So I'm not trying to be an alarmist here, but I'm just saying that actually the periscopic zoom lens does, when you open it in the standard mode and you select the 4.3x lens, it is cropping a little bit, not a lot, but I'll show you guys again. So we go to this image to Winifred sitting on the steps. She looks really great here. We're entirely in the shadow. The portrait mode shot looks great. Again, it's very smooth, very pretty, right? Eyes are kind of dolled up, you can see, and hopefully you're able to see like the eye effect, how it's like brightening the whites and it's really accentuating the reflections in her eyes. I will say when I added the blur after the fact, we are losing Winifred's eyebrows, and you can see that it's clipping some of her locks. So as her hair comes down, you can see that it's clipped some. So there are some mistakes. I didn't find a whole lot of mistakes with the portrait mode, just so that you know. I have a lot of samples, and one thing that I didn't make note of was I didn't just find numerous mistakes with the portrait mode. There are some. Okay, yeah, there are some. I do find that it makes fewer mistakes when you shoot in the portrait mode than when you add it afterwards. So there's kind of a toss-up here. Like, you're going to get that very unnatural look, but you're also going to get lots of, I think, overall, like a more accurate portrait, okay, as far as, like, the cutout. But it is quite strong. That's another thing, is, like, I don't really like this, like, extremely strong portrait mode. Again, I think I got really good colors out of the gallery editor from the raw file. It's a little bit warm for my taste. The colors look definitely a bit different, more brown, less orange coming out of Lightroom. There is no background blur because you can't add background blur in the Lightroom unless you pay for it. But of course we have the natural background blur from the lens itself, which is capable of giving you some portrait effect. Okay. The next shot is Winifred indoor setting. Okay. Indoor setting, and I said, hey, just look at this book, I'll take a shot and we'll see what we can do. I think it turned out really good. Tons of background blur, and it's gonna do this thing again. I'm gonna show you guys the standard shot before editing, and then I'm gonna show you the gallery editor, and again you'll see that it cut off her eyelashes. It did this consistently throughout all the images, but again, if you look at the standard portrait shot, heavily edited skin, extremely edited skin, very flattened color tones, very brightened, but it retained more of the eyelash. Again, the cutout's just a little bit better. I was able to get, I would say, slightly more accurate skin tones, in my opinion. Just my personal opinion. I was able to get better skin tones editing myself. The Lightroom photos didn't turn out great because I really should have moved my settings just a little bit more. I believe I shot this photo a little bit on the yellow side, or it was a little bit on the green side as far as like its color capture. I don't know if they removed it somehow with an update. I could have sworn that in the manual mode on the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, there was also a slider for tint, which is magenta to green. You have warm to cold, right? Blue to yellow, but then you also have magenta to green. And I could have swore that was a setting, but now all of a sudden when I'm trying to find it again, I can't find it anymore. And this is an instance where I really would have liked to have moved it more into the magenta direction, because this image before editing from the raw capture looks quite green to me, green and yellow, really. Now I've got this image with Winifred. This is actually fantastic lighting, by the way. This is an image of Winifred sitting on these steps, and there was a big, tall glass window. I'll show you guys. It'll actually be in the next shot. You'll see it. That's actually flooding in like soft light from the right-hand side. So you do have some very good fall off with the colors and stuff. I actually think that my edited regular shot is definitively better than the portrait mode shot. The hair is a little bit better on the portrait mode shot. If you go down to the ends of the hair, you can see that when I added the portrait effect, it clipped them off. In the regular shot, it did not. Her skin is very heavily edited. I was able to kind of clean this up, but make it look natural, right? Not overdone, make it look natural, but cleaned up a little bit. But I just like my skin tones a lot better on my edited copy. Let's go to the other shots, okay? And this is where I'm going to flip back and forth on my screen, and I can actually see now the focal range difference, right? This was a 4.3x shot. Okay, so this is with the periscopic zoom lens, and you can see that when I go to RAW, that image is quite backed up compared to the other ones. Now, you do get nice fall off. The transition from highlights to shadows is very smooth in this shot. I actually still think I got colors a little bit better in my regular shot edited, and I just think it's because the phone gets really good skin tones already, so I didn't have to move it very much. Whereas when you shoot in RAW, you got to keep in mind that this image is going to come out like entirely unaided, right? So you're going to have to do everything on your own. You're going to have to help it out on your own. Okay, so you can get it there But again, everything, it's also really relative, because if you're editing on a screen, like the Pixel, right? I have a Pixel and a Xiaomi, right? Those are my two phones. The Pixel screen is very, like, calibrated, very different from the Xiaomi. The Xiaomi is very contrasty. The Xiaomi is very, like, dark. It's very heavy in the shadows. So when you're editing on the Xiaomi, something might look, you know, if you bring something up, you might, like, over bring it up because you're seeing really intense shadows just from the way the screen is calibrated. I'm just pointing all that out to say, you know, don't expect perfect results from this comparison. But, yeah. Then we have the Lightroom copies. They have great tonality and all that stuff. Again, here's the SDR versus HDR. In my opinion, there's a huge difference between the SDR output and the HDR output here. On the screen, the SDR looks better because I'm viewing it on an SDR screen, although I do recall that the HDR looked really good when I was viewing it on an HDR screen. Okay. And now this is, you could see the big window in the background. Now this was very challenging because you could see, again, I wanted to put in some challenging effects, some challenging scenes in these shots, and this is entirely backlit, where all of that light pouring in from the window is hitting the back of her head and making her face completely in shadow. Look at how much of it you can recover in Lightroom. Those are the Lightroom shots. And you can see that it just doesn't really get the same effect. When I said that you have so much more color control in Lightroom, this image right here really exemplifies it. Does it look unnatural? Yes. Yes, it does. But, like, did I recover the colors? Yes. Yes, I did recover the colors. So I'm just saying, like, things are much more recoverable in the Lightroom shots, and you can see that so evidently here compared to some of the other ones. The next most recoverable was the RAW in gallery editor, and the least recoverable was the not RAW, the standard shot editing in the gallery. That was our least recoverable photo. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the Whitley shoot, which was some days later, so I'm going to scroll through my gallery here. Okay, again, she changed poses sometime. I'm actually going to skip the first photo because, for lack of a better word, I was basically kind of dicking around for the first few, and that was when I was trying to get, I was playing around with this, like running it through Lightroom and then pulling it out of Lightroom and then running it through the gallery editor. I was doing all this nonsense, okay? So I'm going to skip that and just go to the other ones because there's quite a few shots for Whitley. Really what you're going to want to look for here is we got a lot of bright tones, right? She's wearing bright pink pants, a completely white top, like a dental white top. She has bright blonde hair, and she has fairly pale skin, even for a white person. So this is a great contrast because it's kind of seeing how it handles the complete opposite of Winifred. Okay, so in this first image, this is my edited copy of the standard shot. I think it looks fantastic. This is a great edit. I'm using that eye slider quite a lot, so you can see there's this sparkle, this twinkle in her eyes. That is from the eye slider. The hair cutout could be better, but the ruffles, if you look at, I'm so glad I didn't ask her to wear this, she just wore it, but if you look at the ruffles on her shirt, I think in every single one of these shots, it gets the ruffles like perfect. It never really missed one of the ruffles, but you guys could be the judge of that for yourself. I really wish it would have captured this post where it has her hands. If you look, it's got it blurred out, even though her hand is right there. So obviously it should be in focus. Okay, but we have that nice spiral background. I really like it. Her hair looks good. The skin tones look good. Let's go to the regular shot. This is an HDR image, but it's displaying an SDR on the screen. Looks great. We go to the portrait shot. Very brightened, also a little bit orangified. It almost gave her like a little tan. You can see that she's got a much more warmer skin tone in this one. And it's like, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I moved that eye effect to 100, and it just seems like it's even more powerful in the portrait shot. I mean, it takes that eye effect and bumps it up to 100. I will say the hair cutout looks slightly better on the portrait mode. Nothing is overexposed, and it did maintain that post. So if you look down at the post, that's a little bit better. The face is, to me, completely not natural. That's not even how she looks. Her skin tone doesn't look like that. Her eyes weren't that bright. Even her hair almost looks like it picked up a little bit of orange tone to it, like a golden tone. And she has very like almost like a white blonde hair. So I don't know. The portrait mode is making a lot of changes. Then we have our raw shots. We were able to get great HDR images. I mean, No background blur, but great HDR images. Then we have the raw shot edited in the gallery. Looks really good. I think I took it a little bit too warm. It again missed the post, or it's trying to blur the post. But again, there's just better tonality, a little bit brighter shadows here. But I think overall, I think the best photo out of this set would have been my edited copy of the regular shot. Would be my favorite out of this bunch. Let's go to the next one. She has her hand on this post here. It did capture it. I can see that it didn't blur the post out. We're still sticking with the spiral blur. We're a little bit overexposed on the hair. You can see that the ruffles are perfectly captured. The hair is kind of missing on the right side just a little bit. Let's go to the portrait mode shot and see how that looks. I mean, it looks really good. It looks really flattering. Again, it's giving her a little bit of a tan that she doesn't actually have in real life. The post, let's see. You know, the post is a little bit blurred in my copy, but it's less blurred in the portrait shot, so that's quite interesting. I will say, too, if you look at the shirt, the portrait mode is actually picking up quite a bit of the blue cast from the clouds. This was like a partly cloudy, partly sunny day, and so there's gonna be some blue tones in the air that I had to edit out, and the portrait mode was not able to do that, so you have quite a blue top here. Let's go to some of the raw files. Very pale. You know, you could blame that on me, but it was kind of difficult to edit these, I'll be honest with you. The blue tone looks much better on the HDR copy, and then it was a little bit more present on the SDR. Quite a crunchy background look. I think this was with the 4.3x, which typically has more square type background blur. Then we go to the raw photo edited with the gallery. Looks really good. It's got great tonality. I'm trying to see. I still prefer the regular shot on this one. Regular shot edited in gallery is probably my favorite out of this bunch. Definitely a little bit more bluer on the top. Still overexposed in the hair. We were not able to recover that highlight in the hair without, you know, making the image a little bit too dark. We did maintain the post here. The handrail is not blurred out. I do like the spiral blur a lot, but I think the colors are a little bit flat for me. So that's why I like the other one just a little bit more. Okay. Now I got this shot. I did a little bit of AI editing on this one, so this was just for fun to test out some features. This is really difficult because the background is extremely bright. Whitley is standing in the shadows. Okay, so the top looks correct. It's a good color tone. This whole image just doesn't look natural because we're trying to make something that was dark bright, and we're trying to make something that was bright dark. So we're obviously going against the natural order of the world when we edited these. But let's look at some other ones, right? Let's look at how the portrait mode turned out. Actually, the portrait mode looks natural in terms of the colors, not her skin. The skin tones are completely unnatural. But the eye effect, I told you, I was taking it up to 100, but it just seems like the eye effect is so much more intense on the portrait mode. Look at the glitter, look at the glimmer. It's insane. We do have the blue tone on the shirt again, but it looks more balanced, right? It's an HDR shot, so it's getting a more balanced color tone between the foreground and the background. But again, it doesn't really look natural to me. Going to the Lightroom copies, they're very pale, they're very washed out. Again, this is you guys don't understand, we're shooting in very difficult conditions. It's hard to get a good result when you have a very like unnatural output. It's very hard to get a good output out of when you shoot in bad conditions. Okay, let's continue. Let's go to the next one. So I shot one with the 3x and then I switched to the 4x, so we should actually see that perspective change a little bit here, but I'm not looking for it. But anyways, let's look at these. How did these turn out? So the first shot looks really good in my opinion. I like this one a lot. It looks, for some reason, it looks a lot more natural than the previous focal length. I'm not really sure why. We go to the HDR shot. It's definitely, again, much more balanced, more blue on the shirt. The cutout, let's compare the cutouts. Actually, the ruffle got clipped once. It looks like just a little bit on the corner here in the regular shot. In the portrait mode shot, it looks like it nailed it. What else? How about the handrail? Handrail looks the same in both. Background blur looks about equal. Again, but I'm manually setting that background blur. Skin tone's a little bit too orange compared to Whitley. She is genuinely pale as f***. But anyways, let's go on to the raw copies. Again, it was really hard to get good skin tones out of the raw copies in this instance. I know I mentioned it previously. I think this is actually pretty accurate to how she looks in real life, but it's just not very flattering. I would say overall, even though I don't think it's the most flattering image, the most like the combination of realistic plus flattering is probably, again, the raw file edited with the gallery. We're getting the background blur. We have better tones than we do in the regular shot, although the regular shot does look really good too. I don't know. It's probably going to end up being the regular shot again. Now, this is going to be very different. This shot is because we had the light coming from the background. So now we finally have a front lit subject against a darker background, which is really going to isolate the subject, and it's just going to make her good. I mean, just to start with, when you shoot in good conditions, you're going to get good results. So this is my edited copy. Again, you can see it's doing this thing where it's trying to invent streetlights in the trees. I really, really, really don't like that it does that. If you can ignore that, I really like this effect, but it keeps making this mistake where it finds these highlights in the trees and it thinks they're street lights. Anyways, look at her eyes, look at the glimmer compared to the regular. It's actually not that different, but that's with the eye effect on maximum. Skin tones look great. The cutout actually looks pretty solid, to be honest with you. I'm struggling to find a mistake, even with this little spot in between her arm and her hips. It looks like it cut it out well. Let's go to the portrait mode. Portrait mode definitely adding a little bit of warmth. And what else? What else? I would say the background blur is much more gradual. I'm comparing it to the spiral. It's a lot more gradual in the portrait mode. It's a lot flatter of an image. The eyes are absolutely sparkling. Now again, whether you like that or not is up to you. I would say the shirt again looks wider in my copy compared to the portrait mode. Not by a lot, but just slightly less blue tones in my copy. We go to the Lightroom outputs, which have great colors, really great colors. This is probably how this looked in real life. The whites are correct. And then we have our edited copies. Let's see. Yeah, good colors. Good colors. No cutout, right? Because we weren't able to do the background effect here. I have an extra copy here edited, and I don't know what this extra edited copy is. I truly don't know why I have two. Unless that's the gallery. That must be the gallery raw. Yeah, that's the gallery raw. Okay, so the gallery raw looks great. In fact, in terms of skin tones, I would say that you can see that there's like much more depth. Like and I'm trying to show you what I'm talking about. If you look at the fall off from the cheeks, from the highlights to the shadows in the raw file compared to the gallery shot or the standard shot, you'll see that the standard shot has a much more flat tone mapping, whereas the raw edited in the gallery has this, like, it has brights, it has darks, and a mixture so that you have a little bit more three-dimensional color. So that's great. I think the HDR shot looks really bad here, but again, I'm looking at it on an SDR display. So this shot actually was interesting because there's not much separation between the foreground and the background. So this is all about skin tones. What gets good skin tones? My edited copy looks great. I mean, it really does. This is like, that's what she looks like right there. That is exactly what she looks like. My edited copy. The portrait mode intensified her blue eyes again. It made her lips almost like more red. It added a little bit of orange tone to her. Her hair color also gets a little bit of boost in saturation. If we go to the raw files, they're a little bit accentuated. A little bit. I shot these a little bit warm. You got great depth. Again, the difference between the highlights and the shadows is really great in these. These all, to me, look really good. One of them was shot a little bit too warm. I don't know which one this is. I'll have to find out, but this one, whichever one this is a little bit too warm. Because there's no background, it's hard for me to tell if this was the Lightroom edited copy or the gallery edited copy, because none of them are going to have background blur. If I had to guess, the one with the more accurate skin tones is the Lightroom edited, and then the gallery edited is where I went a little bit too warm with my edit. The skin, I think I was maybe matching for the shirt a bit too much. I'm focusing on that shirt, trying to get that shirt perfectly white, and in the process, it might be pushing her skin tones one way or the other, right? Because remember that the colors that keep hitting the shirt are blue, right? So I have to push the image back warm to get a white tone on that shirt, and I think that's probably what's happening here. Is I pushed the tones to get that shirt back to white, and in the process, I made Whitley's skin a little bit too warm. All right, so then we have this shot. It's backlit again. It's kind of side lit as well. But I really like this pose. It looks good. It was very challenging light, which ended up making a very flat color profile on her face. It's not flattering to her. I don't think this is a good shot in terms of making Whitley look good, because it just makes the tones look just a little bit too flat. I actually think for this one, I was able to get the best results in Lightroom for sure, because what it's really, really lacking was the tones. It really needed the colors to come back and save this image, and you get a lot more of that in the Lightroom copy. So this Lightroom copy actually, yeah, it's either between the Lightroom copy or the gallery edited RAW. The gallery edited RAW has a lot. I can definitely see that the Lightroom, and I'm going to show you guys this. We're going to look at the arm, the left arm here. Well, it's her right arm, but we're looking at it to the left of the image. There's so much more highlight detail saved in the Lightroom copy. It's a flatter color again, but that has a lot to do with the lighting situation, not really my editing. I do like the depth a lot more from the gallery edited copy. I can tell this is the gallery edited because of the swirl, and it's got more contrast, and I think the contrast is helping it here, but you could definitely tell that more light detail was, or highlight detail was retained in the Lightroom copy. So we'll look at that. Then we have this other pose. It's very similar. I basically just moved from using the 4.3x lens to using the 3 lens. Okay, we're gonna have the same problems here where we're dealing with, and these are gonna be backwards. We got some of these, like the raw copies. My God, the portrait mode shot is just full of unnatural background blur. Her skin is so smooth. You're getting actually a lot of blue tones in the hair on the left, which maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't. I actually really prefer my edited copies here, to be honest with you. I greatly prefer them over the portrait mode. And I'm not just saying that, like, I'll tell you when the portrait mode is great, but like the colors are just way off. One of these, again, my edit was just way too warm. One of them is way too flat. It's hard. It's hard when you I'm telling you, if you want a good result,
seriously?
Yeah. Try to start with a good product. Start with a good photo first, and it becomes a lot easier to edit. Here's our portrait mode. She's sitting down again. I like to tell people to sit down when I shoot them for some reason. Eyes are going crazy. This is the portrait mode shot. And then we have the blouse top that is quite blue. Image looks great. Colors are just a little bit off. I actually don't think her skin is overly orange in this one. I don't find that she is overly orange in this portrait shot. So this is actually probably the best portrait shot. It did miss the hair just a little bit, or it's starting to pick up some of the background you can see on the left side. Other than that small little spot, the fluffs, I forget, I got the words right earlier, but these little fluffs on her arm, her shirt, the blouse ruffles, that's what they are, the blouse ruffles, is cut out really well. You can see that it cut out the arm really well. It's actually starting to get a little bit of fall off from her face to her arm. You can see her hand is starting to blur out. Let's go to my copy. Looks great. Great tonality. It's got a little bit more depth, a little bit more contrast. It's not quite as blue on the shirt. I think overall my editing color science is a little bit better than the portrait shot. You do have the regular shot that's not edited. Okay, then we go to the Lightroom shots, which on this monitor look quite flat because, again, HDR to SDR shot. And then we have the raw file edited in the gallery. Cutout looks really good. Hand is starting to be blurred, so okay, it's doing that as well. The shirt looks really great. I just feel like it's missing some color. This is another one where if I'm looking at it on this display, I think the best photo is the regular shot edited in gallery to what I'm looking at. But again, it's probably going to look different in the video because, again, we're going to export these and who knows what it'll end up doing to the colors. This was another terrible shot, very challenging shot. She's sitting in the shadow, but there is light all around her. There's light behind her. There's light in front of her. So it's just a very challenging shot overall. The portrait mode did unspeakable things to her face. Extremely warm tones compared to her real life. Her eyes are like exploding. She kind of looks like a rabbit. I don't know why, but she kind of looks like a rabbit to me here. My shot's very flat because, again, it's really difficult to recover some of these details when you have not much light separation from your subject. Here comes the raw files. Better colors out of the raw files for sure, but it's very flat image, and the raw file edited in the gallery just looks bad. It just does. Okay, it's a little bit too warm. It's got red tones. I can see some red tones in her skin, and the cutout is not fantastic. How's the cutout in the portrait mode? It's missed a couple things here and there. I mean, just the stuff it's doing to her face is insane. So probably not. Now we go to this shot. She's next to a wooden post. You got nice colors in the background, some blue sky, the water, some greenery, right? So there should be a nice like mixture of things here. Here's the raw shots first. I remember this. You do see what in the HDR shot we're able to recover some hair detail. Let's go next. This must be the, actually that looks like my edited copy because of the swirl. Here's the portrait mode shot. Again, the portrait mode is just adding almost like, it looks like we're shining a flashlight in her face, sort of. The eye effect is too strong. The hair highlights are very well contained in the portrait shot. At least I think that's what that is. No, this is the portrait shot. Excuse me, I was speaking on another one. I was speaking on my photo. That is the standard photo edited in the standard photo edited in gallery. The raw photo edited in gallery does have some really good skin tone mapping. I can see that blur. It's definitely missing a lot of strands of hair. How is the portrait mode doing? I do see the portrait mode is actually picking up a lot of those hair strands. So for cutout, you need to use the portrait mode. The problem is that this is not a raw file, so it's not as editable. Keep that in mind. So if you're gonna want to push it around, you're gonna be less able to do that. And I don't know how undoable some of these effects are. Like if you shoot it in portrait mode, I don't know how undoable all of this like over editing to the face is. To be honest with you, the portrait mode is probably the most flattering shot here. But man, it almost feels like it's reshaping her face. Like her face doesn't even seem to be the same shape to me, to be honest with you. Now this was an interesting one because I used one of the AI effects to add back the top of her head. You can see I actually missed it just a little bit in one of these images and I was able to add it back. So I was able to test that AI mode and it worked. Let's see, which one of these is the portrait shot? We definitely are getting the best colors out of some of these other photos, okay? Some of these edited copies. Yeah, this is the raw file edited in Lightroom. That's our gallery shot right there. Our gallery shot has great colors. I think I maybe made a little bit too warm. Again, I think I focused too much on that white shirt, right? You find something white and you try to balance for it. But then my Lightroom copies are much too pale. My Lightroom copies are too pale. I actually think the photo that probably has the best skin tones, or the most accurate skin tones, is probably the regular shot that was not edited. Just the regular shot before any editing had probably the best skin tones. So that concludes looking at all of these photos. What are the conclusions, right? If you want the best colors, you need to shoot in RAW and edit in Lightroom, especially if you're talking about tonality, like lights to darks, highlights to shadows. If you want the best cutout, you need to shoot in the portrait mode. I think a great compromise is shooting in the RAW, editing in the gallery, because you get a little bit better contrast controls, you get a little bit better control of the colors, the highlights, and the shadows using the RAW file. Even in the gallery editor, you do still have access to a lot of the AI effects, the background blur, the skin smoothing effects, okay, the eye popping effect. I do think overall, a lot of the photos I did prefer, I'll just say, I did prefer the regular shot and then editing in gallery. Again, these aren't going to export in HDR, you're getting an SDR copy, but you're getting the phone's color science of skin first, and then you're working from there. And I think when you have that good starting point, it's kind of able to help out. Now, one of the things that continues to be true is the photos that turned out really good are the photos that had a good starting point, right? When the lighting was really good, the photos turned out really good. When the lighting is bad, I mean, you could try to recover it, but even the portrait mode, right? The portrait mode struggled when we had a lot of backlighting. It's just doing horrific things to the face whenever you're using the portrait mode. So the takeaway is try to get a good result from the start, okay, if you can. And then from there, if you want to edit, I would either recommend going from the regular shot or the raw shot. The gallery editor is great if you are comfortable with your amount of background blur and you just want the greatest colors. Lightroom for mobile, I think, will give you slightly better colors, although it's a little bit difficult to get a good export. I noticed a lot of my Lightroom exports were kind of muted on color, or very flattened or very washed out. I don't know if that was just how it looked, like, you know, it looked one way and then I exported it and then it looked different, but I just kind of noticed that pattern throughout this entire thing, or maybe it was just that like adding more color was making it look more contrasty. That can also be a thing. If you don't know, whenever you reduce highlights or you reduce shadows, it can make the colors look more intense. So I'm not really sure why, but I don't think I was able to get like the best. You know, I know that it's capable of getting the best colors out of the Lightroom, but I just don't think I did in this particular data set, this sample set that we're looking at here. But I hope you guys were able to learn something about this portrait mode. Stay tuned for my product photography video coming up. I'm still doing shoots for them, so we're still building out that portfolio of images. Please go follow XIAOMI Watch Company for helping out the channel and lending us a watch to shoot on the channel. If you guys found any value in this video, please like, comment. Any interaction with the video helps tremendously. And if you feel like I earned it, please subscribe. Please consider subscribing. We're growing pretty quick, I think. I'm really grateful for the amount of growth we've had. But that is the complete breakdown of how to get the best possible portrait shot out of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. I will catch you guys in the next one.